What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to the channel, and it's always a good time after the NFL draft to do my favorite annual video, a way too early 2025 NFL mock draft. I feel on top of it this year because I made the 2025 draft class on Xbox Next Gen for Madden 24. So a lot of these players, I got already personal takes about them. I've been looking a little bit longer down the line here as opposed to 2024 NFL draft. I got a good grasp of guys that I think are going to be first rounders. I got 30 players that I feel, barring like an injury or completely falling off a cliff, are going to be at worst in the discussion. Because, I mean, that's the fun thing, is to revisit these mock drafts and just have like a guy that goes third overall and ends up being UDFA or something like that. It happens every year. So this is ultimately pretty pointless, but pretty fun to just kind of look back from in a year's time and just see how right and or most likely how wrong I really was. So this draft order, don't come at me. It's based off of Vegas and all that stuff. And we unfortunately have the Carolina Panthers with the first pick. And I don't think they'd be ready to give up on Bryce Young. I don't think it's going to be a Kyler Murray situation. I think they're going to be looking for a Brian Burns replacement. And I think all the hype right now very much warranted by James Pierce out of Tennessee. I think as long as he tests well, he is probably at worst going to be a top 5 pick. And it's been a minute since we've seen like a edge rusher go for it's I mean there has been, right, going back to the Jacksonville, but it does feel like kind of it's been all quarterbacks first overall for the most part of the last 5-6 years. Now I have not looked that up. I can be completely off base. It just feels like that's been the case. And maybe we'll usher in another era of edge rushers going with the one spot. We have the Patriots, the Drake May era. Not off to a great start. Spoilers on the channel. Tomorrow is a 10-year Drake May Patriots rebuild, and it's a banger. There's like 3 or 4 things that make it already stand out and arguably be our best 10-year rebuild yet. And then in 2 days' time, we're going to do another Honey Hunters. But the Patriots, hope they are not in this pick. But if they are, I think it is time. They could look tackle here. There's some great offensive tackles on the board. I would, it's going to be that Penei Sewell argument. Do you go and get Luther Burden, the best wide receiver in the country, or do you not worry about that and you worry about protecting Drake May? And if that is the case, I think it's more appropriate at pick 2, a defensive head coach, Gerard Mayo, to build in the trenches. We're going to go with Will Campbell, who I think is the top tackle in college football right now out of LSU. We now have Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos picking at 3. And they are just laughing. I think there's going to be some pressure here, maybe to get Travis Hunter, Colorado ties and stuff like that. But I think doing what's best, Travis Hunter is likely going to be a corner. I think they go out and get Luther Burden. They get the best wide receiver in the country. I mean, every year it does feel like someone gets compared to Deebo Samuel, the next Deebo Samuel. But Luther Burden is like, you got Malachi Corley, for example. Went to the Jets, comp to Deebo Samuel. What are we on, 3rd round? Like, you get these guys. I mean, Deebo wasn't a first rounder, right? But you get these guys that get comped to being the next Deebo, get that versatile slot wide receiver, gadget play. You can line up in the backfield, tough runner, yards after the catch. But like the last couple guys that have been comped to that are not first round consensus picks. Luther Burden is like the better version of Deebo. Deebo Samuel, kind of limited as a route runner, more of a gadget player, with all due respect. Burden is like if Deebo Samuel was also an outstanding route runner, had reliable hands, and can win against one-on-one. And I think that would be an outstanding pick to help maximize, Bo Nix there in Denver. We have the Commanders up at pick 4. And the Commanders are also in an interesting spot because I think they can go a bunch of different spots. They're going to be BPA. And if that's the case, edge rusher is their need. And I would say, knowing what the Commanders like in a pass rush, they could go corner. This could be Travis Hunter territory. I could see the new ownership in Wash. I'll say this. I could see that. I don't think Travis Hunter is going to be the consensus number 1. I think Will Johnson might have him slightly edged out for the top corner in this class. But I think the upside, I think the marketability, which is absolutely something that needs to be valued, and I would say maybe the highest ceiling out of any player is Travis Hunter, just because, Jesus Christ, he's a two-way player that can, he's probably a third round pick at wide receiver, first round pick at corner. It's been a minute since you've seen something like that. But I don't think he's going to be the first corner taken. And it's a little rich for corner. And I'm going to go on a big projection here. The Commanders desperately need pass rush help after shipping out their pass rush. They got Johnny Newton on the inside, which is great value. I don't know how that D-line is going to shape up with Newton, Payne, John Allen. I think Abdul Carter, who switched from an off-ball linebacker to an edge, who's a ridiculous athlete, I think he's going to cash out. I think he's going to have a breakout season for Penn State. He's going to rack up big-time sack numbers. He's going to put up your classic Penn State edge rusher combine where it's a 9.7 RAS, and everyone's going to talk about he's only 1 year as an edge rusher. What is his ceiling going to be? Ridiculously high ceiling. So I think it's going to be the year of the edge rusher. And we're going to have Abdul Carter go to the Commanders and give them a very versatile player who, honestly, similarity-wise, I don't know if he's going to test as frequently as Micah Parsons. I would actually make the argument he's going to produce more in college than Micah Parsons did. But given their background from like linebacker hybrid to now an edge rusher, very similar to Micah Parsons, I'm going to assume he's going to be a great athlete like Micah Parsons. I think it's just a matter of time till those comps start rolling in. Tennessee at pick 5. Mock ticket. You know what? If they do finish 5th, maybe they give up on Will Levis. I mean, there's no risk sticking with Will Levis. I did think about doing trades because I think in this scenario, this is where you'd see the Giants like immediately try to trade up real quick and get one of the quarterbacks. But I don't know if you give up on Will Levis. I think there's enough there. And the question and argument might come, is there enough supporting cast around Will Levis? Is the defense up to snuff with Will Levis? But I'm going to be under the assumption that if the Titans are picking 5th, the Will Levis experiment did not work out well. So they are going to go with the top quarterback. I think will be the first quarterback taken, Carson Beck out of Georgia. Graded out very well by PFF. And, you're never going to put up shocking, eye-popping numbers at Georgia. It's just the nature of the beast there. But I do think when it comes to testing, it's a matter of time until these Georgia 5-star recruit quarterbacks finally end up like being like a real legit NFL prospect. I think Beck is going to be the first of, unfortunately, looking like many. But that's a great pick because now the Giants are sitting there and being like, hey, what do we got here at quarterback? Shedeur Sanders is here. But I think they are going to make Bengals day. And I don't know. I feel like, and here's why I do this. I think the Giants front office might be off-put by Shedeur Sanders and the Deion Sanders stuff. I mean, they've been connected to a player like that before in Eli Manning. So, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of something going on. But I would say push comes to shove, and this is going to be the hot pick. I have them going Quinn Ewers. I could also see, after this upcoming college football season, a scenario where Quinn Ewers gets benched and Arch Manning's playing quarterback for Texas. It's a very unique and potentially weird dynamic there. I do like Quinn Ewers. The good of Quinn Ewers is a first-round quarterback prospect. The bad is not particularly great. He's a volatile player, can be, but if he puts it all together, which I think he could, he's going to be a lock to be one of the top 3 quarterbacks, top 10 pick in the next draft. If Bo Nix and Michael Penix can be first-round picks, Quinn Ewers with a strong season in Texas, which, I mean, I think expectations are going to be very high for Texas. It could happen, but I'm also going to say right now, if we look back a year from now and Quinn Ewers ends up, it's a plane crash of a situation in the quarterback room. I think this is going to be the one pick that ages terribly. And I almost feel like the reason I make that pick is because I think that this is a perfect landing spot of Shedeur Sanders going to the Vegas Raiders. I think that's going to be, now it's going to be infamous. Deion came out, Primetime came out. So there's only certain teams that I want my kids to go to, that I'm going to allow them to go to. Many things will get out. I think Vegas is certainly going to be one of them. I think it's a great marketing opportunity. I think, hell, even if you want to even make the Sphinx, have Vegas trade up. Trade up and get Shedeur. But I think that is going to be the spot that he ends up going. Now we have the Arizona Cardinals. And here's where I'm going to have them go with Will Johnson. Travis Hunter starting to free fall here a little bit. I think his floor will be the Minnesota Vikings. Just to talk about both of them, I think you get, obviously, a little bit more marketability with Hunter, but I think if you're just looking for the pure out-and-out better corner right now, it has got to be Will Johnson. And I would even say it might not even be that much of a hot take to say Benjamin Morrison could get drafted ahead of Travis Hunter. But I do think there's also some value in stating that there's an insane marketability and the ceiling of Travis Hunter is going to be enough for someone to say, maybe he's not as refined as some of these top corners, but his ceiling can absolutely get there. And if you have a defensive-minded staff or anyone on that staff that pounds the table and says, I'm going to be able to develop this guy, I think you take that pick and run with it with Travis Hunter. Now we have the Saints at pick 10. Interesting spot. They're looking for quarterbacks. I personally, as it stands right now, don't have another first-round grade on a quarterback. If I had to say next one up, I know it's like Drew Aller has high ceiling, didn't really finish the season out great with Penn State last year. I mean, some people Cam Ward, you get Jalen Milroe if you want like that big-time athlete. I would say if I'm the Saints, you might be more so looking to the development of Spencer Rattler, who you just landed in the draft. I think beyond that, they're looking for corner. I think Marshawn Lattimore potentially could be his last year in New Orleans, so you want to improve that a little bit. And we're going to have them go with Benjamin Morrison, the corner out of Notre Dame. Seattle up on the clock. Very surprised to see quarterback there. Not because I don't know if they're necessarily going to move on from Geno Smith, but I feel like they got their developmental quarterback in Sam Howell. So now we're on to the Seattle Seahawks at pick 11, where we have quarterback. Again, is what it is. But I think D-line, that's where you might be able to pivot here a little bit. And how about an interior pass rusher on the defensive line? I would go Mykel Williams out of Georgia, big-time recruit. And I think when all is said and done, I think I'm looking at these rankings. I disagree with what we got there. I think that we're going to see a couple reaches based off of these ratings. But I think there is, much like Edge, I think it's going to be a D-line draft class coming up. D-line, corner's going to be a strength, some dogs at wide receiver, some great tackles. I think that is where we're going to see big-time run-ons in this upcoming draft, because now we have the Colts coming up, picking at 12. We're looking at D-line. They're looking at corner. Looking at the corners that are available. Denzel Burke makes sense. I have a first-round grade on Takario Davis, big 6'4" corner out of Arizona. The value could come, though, on the defensive line right now. They went Latu in the first round. I think they could continue to invest. I think Mason Graham makes a lot of sense. Is Grover Stewart going to be their long-term? Right? Did they repay? They repaid Buckner, I believe. But you get your run stuffer there. I'm assuming somebody's going to give on that D-line in terms of cost-cutting measures. I think Mason Graham could easily fill in that role, say if it is Grover Stewart as the odd man out. Tampa Bay at pick number 13. We're going to have them. Corners are big need, and they're going to go get I'm not going to say surprising, but, I mean, this is a guy that's grinded his way. He was like a third-round prospect, but now, after last year, a strong year at Ohio State, returning to school, could have declared. I think he's definitely, if he has another strong year, going to be, athletically speaking, enough to put him in the first-round conversation. So we're going to have the Bucs here grab themselves the nice corner out of Ohio State in Denzel Burke. Steelers up on the clock. They could be looking QB. They did not pick up the fifth-year option of Justin Fields. It's just a weird situation there. It's a mess that I don't really want to deal with, and there's not really, I don't think, a true fit there, I don't think. So what I'm going to have them, and they're going to go with, I think, first-rounder. I think Walter Nolan, 5-star recruit, potential to be a first-rounder. But the guy that I think is going to get, he's a nose tackle. He's 6'6", 350 pounds, but he had like the 7th best pass rush win rate in all of college football last year. As long as he tests better than expected, like a Don Terry Poe. Deion Walker from Kentucky is an absolute hoss. A great fit. And I think I think any of these guys make sense. Cam Hayward's successor on that D-line for Pittsburgh. But I think if Cam Hayward doesn't retire, someone like Walker might be the more plug-and-play player available. I think he's getting slept on. And I think he's going to get classified. Nose tackles don't really go first round unless you're like a Jordan Davis caliber S-tier athlete. I think Walker might be able to enter that conversation. Not athletically speaking, but I think where Jordan Davis, the difference is his S-tier 9-9 Raz, whatever you want to call it. I think Walker much more refined as a pass rusher, which is still an area of Jordan Davis's game he needs to work on. So we have the Chargers up at 15, and so many people were screaming for wide receiver, and they're going to be pretty happy. I'm going McMillan. I think stylistically fits the style of wide receiver that the Chargers always like. They like the 6'4", Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson, and that is what you get in McMillan out of Arizona, who also gets some extra dog points for not leaving Arizona when their head coach left for Washington. Always respect those guys for sticking it out. Jacksonville on the clock. They need tackle, and boy, oh boy, do we got one, and they are going to get Kelvin Banks out of Texas. Big-time dog. I think there's going to be very much debate who is the top tackle in this year's draft class. Don't 100% agree with these rankings. I do think Banks and Will Campbell are the best, but I think you look beyond that. Not that, I don't want to say that complete sleepers, but like Monheim is like the 3rd highest graded PFF tackle. You got Cornelius from Oregon, which I don't even see him on there. Another big time. Where is he at? How is he not even making this? Do they have him as a guard? Oh, they don't even have him? Interior? There we go, Cornelius. Okay, maybe if he does project as a guard, that might make some sense. But I do think it is clearly 2 players in the discussion for the top tackle in this draft class. We have the Cleveland Browns And here's where I think the Browns have an opportunity to play a little wild card here. And I'm going to have them get Harold Perkins. I don't know how they're going to use him. Harold Perkins was like a top 3 pass rusher in college. And then LSU's like, we're going to make you an off-ball linebacker. And I think that's kind of the plan going into this year. So he's just kind of that weird hybrid player. And seeing that the Browns need edge and linebacker seems like, 2 swings at it. At 2 big position needs for the Browns. But it's going to be very interesting to see not only how Harold Perkins is used for LSU next year, but how that affects his draft stock. Because I think in terms of pure talent, might be a top 5. But if he becomes one of those weird, Isaiah Simmons, that's just the most recent one. Like just weird, doesn't have a natural position type player. It could have hindered his draft stock a little bit, which would be unfortunate just because that's LSU kind of mismanaging him a little bit. We got the Rams up on the clock now at pick number 18. For the Rams, they're looking tackle, they're looking defensive line, and we are going to hook him up with a great D lineman. We're going to get them Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Another big-time pass rusher. There was games that he looked like the best player on that Ohio State defense that has a bunch of guys that are going to be in first, second-round discussions. I think he fits that front 3 there for the Rams, who, they got Fisk, which was pretty good business. They got Jared Verse, but it's going to take multiple drafts to replace Aaron Donald, and I think they still stay on it here in 2025. Jets at pick 19. Why is wide receiver there? Am I just tripping? They could go quarterback, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. They have Garrett Williams. They drafted Malachi Corley. You still need wideout. There are wideouts available. That's where they want to go. They're stacked at edge rush. Even though they got Hassan Reddick on a 1 year, they're still got more than enough depth there. You could always go BPA on the offensive line. Booker, I'm not necessarily saying he's a lock for the first round personally right now. Wide receiver, that is interesting. I guess their safety room suck. Malachi Starks at safety. He's a doc. He would fit that secondary great. That's where I'm going to go. I like that fit. Malachi Starks is a stud. It's not necessarily rare, but it is uncommon for a safety to go in the first round. But he is head and shoulders, unless Caleb Downs declares, the Alabama transfer to Ohio State. Head and shoulders the top safety in this class, and I think that is the back end continue to reinforce there for the Jets. Kind of surprised. If you hate that pick, just pivot that towards a wide receiver, Stewart or Ibuka. Could make sense, especially Ibuka reuniting with Garrett Wilson. Now we have pick 20, the Chicago Bears. And here's where we're going to have them go out and get an edge rusher. And I'm going to have them get Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, 5-star recruit. And I think now him and Tui Malau are going to absolutely crush it next year for Ohio State. But I think he has the better athletic profile, the more desirable athletic profile. And for the Bears, you get yourself another pass rusher on the other side of Montez Sweat. Atlanta. Atlanta's looking at this and being like, can we draft, another quarterback? I think that's what we need to draft a quarterback. That's never not going to become a meme. But I think for them, for their defensive front, Walter Nolan, former 5-star recruit, big-time transfer Ole Miss, who just absolutely dominate the transfer portal. I think you look at him more so if I was looking at the Falcons roster, what he would kind of fit role-wise. That would be like your Grady Jarrett successor. Obviously, you'd probably be able to play with him right away, earn reps sooner than later. But I think long-term, that'd be great to have like a mentorship kind of deal set up there because the ceiling is very, very high on Nolan, who had 7 sacks at 290 pounds last year. We have Miami at 22, and they are looking, what do we got? Loveland at tight end does make sense. I think he is a first-rounder. I think that's an appropriate range, given the difference, I think, between like Brock Bowers went, 12, 13, 14 to the Raiders. So like that'd be about the difference, I think, in them. He's a PFF darling, receiver, blocker, does it all. Corner is still a need. Yeah, they lost a lot. I still think it's going to take a couple drafts for that Dolphins team to replenish. Even though they did, go chop Robinson, I would go to Terrio Davis here, the 6'4" corner. And all it's going to take is for him to, athletically speaking, don't know from the eye test if he's going to be one of those, like, just freak, at 6'4", I don't know if he's going to run 4.3, but like a low 4.4 would be good enough to be like, holy shit, he's scared. But I'm going to assume that if he runs fast, pretty much if Loveland runs a 4.5, he's gone. Miami's going to pick the fastest guy available on the board, and that very well could be Davis. Green Bay at pick 23. They went Jordan Morgan, so they kind of went offensive line there, so that's their tackle filled. Wide receivers need. Is it? Interesting team that still need a wide. I think if you're Green Bay, I mean, I'm looking from the outside looking in. I'd be optimistic that that young wide receiver room is going to continue to develop. Maybe you're starting to get a little sour on Watson and the availability, and has he reached his ceiling yet? Is what he is. But Jaden Reed's a dog. Wicks is a dog. You found, but you know what? If wide receiver, I'm going to trust the site here and say if that is the case, I think Evan Stewart, 5-star recruit, making the big transfer to a passing-heavy team. He's not going to be kind of undershadowed there. A&M didn't have the best offense last year. He makes sense. And, I mean, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to probably test like a 5-star recruit and solidify himself as a first-rounder, even though that's not necessarily the college production hasn't been there yet. I think he'll probably have a huge year at Oregon. Him and they got Tez Johnson, another big-time dog transfer for the Ducks. Houston at 24, and they are looking for D-line. They could also be looking for wide receiver, which is interesting, but it makes sense because it does seem like there's like something in like Stephon Diggs' contract where they can kind of cash out after this year. You have Nico Collins in a contract year, so things could get a little spicy at the wide receiver room for the Houston Texans. You could also look at defensive line. I don't think Uman and I'm not going to try to show any bias because he left the Gators. Don't think he's going to test well enough to be in the first round discussion. Landon Jackson, interesting body type, like 6'7", 245. I think he made Bruce Feldman's freak list. But I would say, honestly, looking at the players, Tua Maliau is like 280. So maybe that can kind of fit on the D-line there. That's where it gets interesting. We'll throw Mabuka at wide receiver just because the lack of clarity at that wide receiver. Two huge players who they're going to have to figure out if they're going to be able to keep both of them or even one of them on the roster next year. So we'll pivot to wide out in Mabuka, who gives some versatility inside, outside, assuming that Tank Dell long-term, kind of similar type role, and get, one of C.J. Stroud's buddies. Kind of a safe pick there. Now is my Philadelphia Eagles at 25. What are the Eagles going to be looking for in this draft? It's going to be another opportunity to potentially get a Lane Johnson successor. However, they followed my mock offseason and signed Mekhi Becton. Now, it's only on a one-year deal, but if there's any free agent this year that I thought should enroll into Jeff Stoutland U, it was Mekhi Becton. And I think he's only 25. Like, he is kind of the equivalent of like an old rookie. So I think that if we can tap into that potential and lock him into like option-type years, kick him along, and maybe make him our Lane Johnson successor. So I'm going to pivot off that. We're never going to draft a linebacker, even though Barrett Carter is a dog. It's just never going to happen. Looking at free agency, Brandon Graham's probably going to retire. Josh Sweat only just got re-upped. So I think that's the case. Scouting, transfer to Texas A&M. That's probably the best pass rusher available that would fit, I think, what Vic Fangio is going to run. Graded out very well, was a PFF darling. I believe he's the third highest graded edge rusher returning in college football. I believe Georgia Tech. I believe he transferred. It was Purdue. He transferred from Purdue. But he had a top 10 pass rush run weight and was one of the best run defending edge rushers, which, that is as much as we appreciate it and maybe sometimes don't appreciate, like a strength of Brandon Graham's game. So I think we're going to go with that. As long as he tests well, he should be in that conversation for the first round. Dallas up at 26. And I mean, they're not picking, it seems like things could get messy with Dak Prescott there. CeeDee Lamb is yet to get paid. Looking at who's available. They just went Guyton, so they got their developmental tackle. Is Steele going to pan out, right? Is that going to be... I'm just trying to think, like, salary-wise. Who's Dallas's free agents? Ooh, because you got Dak, you got Zach Martin, Tank Lawrence, CeeDee Lamb. As far as, like, starters are concerned. Damn. Okay. I guess under the assumption maybe odd man out there could be Tank Lawrence. I think Tua Maliau with a strong season will probably be in that discussion first, second round type range. So while the Dallas Cowboys pull the trigger there and get a potential Tank Lawrence replacement. Buffalo back on the clock. They did get Keon Coleman, but I think they might want to try to dip at wide receiver again. Now this might be a little off the course here, because I only have one other first round grade as it stands for a wide receiver. I think Sturdivant from UCLA is getting slept on from these rankings. Barian Brown is going to be a freak athlete. Tez Johnson, undersized, could be good. I think Trey Harris from Ole Miss is insane highlight reel. I'm buying stock on Ole Miss. I think they absolutely crushed it financially in the transfer portal, and I think out of this group of wide receivers, who could bump their stock up to be in the first round, all said and done, I think we might have along the lines of like DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown, another first-round Ole Miss wide receiver. We're going to go with Trey Harris there. Have a little bit of fun. Make a little bit of a reach. Cincinnati at 28. Biggest need is running back. In my opinion, Ollie Gordon probably will be the first running back. I think it's a solid class for running back. Judkins, Ole Miss transfer to Ohio State, should be good. Henderson, I like Hampton. Gene T is a dog, man. Probably the best complete running back in college football as far as a runner and receiver. Insane player. Go look at some of the highlights. Probably my favorite running back in the class as it stands, especially because this piece of shit left the Florida Gators. Singleton, dog. Donovan Edwards. I think all these guys, Martinez, are getting slept on. But it's always very tough to project a running back in the first round. Wide receivers are kind of drying up at this point. I think talent-wise, Ted Johnson might have the hype to go in the first round. But again, he's like 5'10", 160. And I don't think he's going to be like 4'2", Xavier Worthy type speed, which has got to hurt his stock there a little bit. So I would pivot. If I'm the Bengals, I'd look at Loveland. There's your weapon. There's your pass weapon for a team that's been tight and hungry for a minute. Detroit up at 29, and they are looking for pass rush. They are looking for wide receiver. That's kind of what everyone is looking at. I like Jabbar Muhammad, but again, undersized, 5'10", 183. Could be very tough for him unless he runs 4'2", to be in that first-round discussion. So kind of looking at the edge rushers, what we have left, Patrick Payton. I think that's still a little bit of project. I like Ethan Burke out of Texas. I think David Bailey out of Stanford, pretty good pass rusher as well. Trey Moore, insane production at UTEP. I don't know if he's going to test off the absolute charts right now. Oh. Now let's have a little bit of fun here. We'll go Ethan Burke. 6'6", 260. I think he had 8 or 9 sacks last year for Texas. Sky's the limit. I think him and Trey Moore are going to have big-time years for Texas, and that'll be my slight little reach. I mean, most of these guys that are in the hundreds, they're going to, a couple of them, at least a handful, are going to go from the hundreds on all these mock draft sites to like 2 months into the college season. They're going to be in first-round locks. We're going to take a couple swings here. Let's not just go consensus. Baltimore up next on the clock, and they are looking for an offensive tackle. Can we hook them up? They have Tyler Book. I mean, that is an Alabama connection, even though I don't necessarily have Booker as a lock for the first round, but I think the ceiling is there. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to probably go in the first round just based off of traits and upside alone. So, yeah, sure, Baltimore, classic Alabama favoritism school, which is not a bad thing. It's a pretty good success rate. So that is where we're going to go there. We got 2 picks remaining. We have the Niners and the Chiefs. We're the 49ers. A lot of areas they can go. I think it'll be another year that they're going to be looking for offensive linemen. So I'm going to have them. I mean, Emory Jones does have first-round traits. I still think, and maybe I'm just way off and just putting too much value into PFF. Maybe the athleticism's not there, but Monheim getting real slept on here. But I also could definitely see Emory Jones being in that discussion on the other side of Will Campbell, who went as our first tackle off the board. So we're going to go that, and we're going to finish up with the Kansas City Chiefs, who are sitting here looking for BPA. I could see BPA being a couple different options for the Kansas City Chiefs. Safety, corner, offensive tackle as well. And you know what? Just to stick my neck out. Screw this site. We'll trust the PFF nerds. They're going to get Monheim. Offensive tackle from USC. I believe he's the 3rd highest graded returning tackle in all of college football for USC. Big-time program. Also, kind of similar to like a Graham Barton a little bit, as there's just insane versatility. He can play guard. He can play tackle, both at a very high PFF nerd grade level. So we'll have the Chiefs there getting a overhaul on the offensive line. So there we go, fellas. That is my way too early 2025 NFL mock draft. Love to hear what you guys think about your team's favorite picks in the comment section below. Did I nail it? Are there any players I'd love to hear, especially these guys that are in like the 600s and 500s that are getting completely slept on that you almost want to guarantee, put a stamp on, get a record, put a receipt out there in the comments that are going to be a first-round pick. Let me know that in the comment section below. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. We'll be back tomorrow with a 10-year Patriot rebuild. And then on Wednesday, back with a new episode of the Honey Hunters going through the offseason. So a couple bangers coming this week. I'll see you guys then. Till then, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love ya. Have a good one.